My breath caught in my throat the moment his fingers wrapped around my wrist. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not today. Not ever, really. Today was Logan's wedding day. The day he'd been planning for 8 months. The day his father had been orchestrating for even longer. The day that would cement the Hawthorne legacy with the prestigious Monroe family. And I was just Eli Carter, his assistant for the past 4 years. The guy who knew how he liked his coffee and which pen he preferred for signing contracts. I'd been at the venue since dawn. My clipboard clutched like a lifeline as I checked off every detail on the impossibly long list. The garden was a masterpiece of ivory roses and trailing jasmine, with gold-trimmed chairs arranged in perfect rows facing an arch wrapped in white silk. String lights had been tested 3 times. The catering staff had arrived on schedule, and the champagne was chilling at exactly the right temperature. Everything was flawless, just like Logan always demanded. Just like I'd made sure it would be, even though every perfect detail felt like a nail in my chest. I'd watched the guests arrive in their designer suits and elegant dresses, air-kissing and laughing about yacht parties and summer homes in the Hamptons. Logan's world. A world I organized and managed but would never truly belong to. I'd smiled at the wedding planner, confirmed the timeline with the photographer, and made sure the ring bearer knew his cue. I'd done everything right, but I hadn't prepared for this. I'd been walking past the groom's suite, just a quick pass to make sure everything was in order, when I heard his voice through the partially open door. Logan was on the phone, his tone flat and measured in a way that made my stomach twist. "I know this is what you want, Dad. I'm doing it." There was a pause, and I should have kept walking. I should have given him privacy. But something in his voice pinned me to the spot. "No, I'm not having second thoughts. Everything's on track." Another pause. "Longer this time." I said, "I'm handling it. The Monroes are expecting this merger as much as you are. I won't let you down." Merger. He'd called his wedding a merger. I forced myself to move, to get away from that door before he realized I'd been listening. But I'd barely taken 3 steps when the door swung open. And there he was. Logan Hawthorne in a black tuxedo that probably cost more than my rent. Every line sharp and perfect except for his eyes. Those storm gray eyes that I'd spent 4 years learning to read right now. They were empty, hollow, like someone had scooped out everything that made him human and left just the shell. He saw me and stopped. For a moment, neither of us moved. The air between us felt thick, charged with something I didn't want to name because naming it would make it real. And real things could hurt you. "Eli." My name came out rough, like he'd been holding his breath. "You look good." I glanced down at my simple black suit. Nothing fancy, nothing like what he was wearing, and felt heat creep up my neck. Just making sure everything's ready. "The guests are all seated. Claire's almost done with hair and makeup. You should probably head to—" "Wait." He stepped closer, and suddenly the hallway felt too small. I could smell his cologne, that sandalwood scent that I'd memorized without meaning to, that lingered in his office long after he left for the day. "Can we talk? Just for a minute?" My heart was doing something erratic in my chest. A rhythm that felt dangerous. "Logan, your wedding starts in 40 minutes. If there's a problem with the arrangements, it's not about the arrangements." He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, messing it up in a way that made him look younger, more vulnerable, more like the Logan who'd stayed late at the office with me, laughing over terrible takeout and impossible deadlines. I need to tell you something before I go out there." Everything in me was screaming to walk away, to make an excuse about checking on the caterers or confirming something with the photographer, to do anything except stand here while he looked at me like that, like I was the answer to a question he'd been too afraid to ask. "Logan." I tried to inject some professionalism into my voice, some distance. "Whatever you need to say, maybe it should wait until after. I can't marry her." The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually took a step back, my shoulder hitting the wall. "What?" "I can't do it, Eli." His voice cracked, and that scared me more than anything else. Logan never cracked. He was composed, controlled, always 3 steps ahead of everyone else. "I've been trying to convince myself for months that this is the right thing, that I can make it work, that maybe love isn't even necessary for a good marriage. But I can't stop thinking." "Don't." I cut him off, panic rising in my throat. "Don't say whatever you're about to say. You're just nervous. Cold feet. It's normal." Is it normal that I've spent the last 2 years wishing it was you instead? The hallway tilted. Or maybe I did. I couldn't tell anymore. That I look for excuses to keep you late at the office, just so I don't have to go home alone? He continued, moving even closer. That every time Claire talks about our future, all I can think about is that it's the wrong person. Stop it. My voice came out strangled. You don't mean this? You're overwhelmed. I'm in love with you. Time stopped. The muffled sounds of the wedding preparations faded into white noise. All I could hear was my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. All I could feel was the way his words wrapped around my ribs and squeezed. He'd said it. After 4 years of careful boundaries and professional distance. After hundreds of moments where I'd wondered if I was imagining the way his gaze lingered. After countless nights lying awake and telling myself I was being ridiculous. He'd actually said it. Run away with me, Logan said, and his hand found my wrist. His thumb pressing against my pulse point like he was trying to feel proof that I was real. Right now. We can just go. Leave all of this behind. I stared at him, at this man who'd consumed my thoughts and my heart for so long that I couldn't remember what it felt like before him. At his desperate eyes and his trembling hand and the way he was looking at me like I was the only thing keeping him tethered to the ground. And all I could think was, this can't be happening. Your father's gonna come looking for you any second. I whispered, not answering his question because I didn't trust myself to answer it honestly. You need Logan? Son, where are you? His father's voice boomed from down the hallway. Authoritative and impatient. Logan's hand fell away from my wrist like I'd burned him. His expression shifted, that vulnerability sliding away behind the mask I knew so well. The one he wore for investors and board meetings, and his father. Here, Dad, he called back, his voice suddenly steady. Professional. Just going over some last-minute details with Eli. Mr. Hawthorne rounded the corner, imposing in his charcoal suit, his steel gray hair, perfectly styled. His sharp eyes moved between us, assessing, the ceremony starts in 30 minutes. You should be at the altar already. I know. I'm ready. But when Logan looked at me one last time before walking away with his father, his eyes told a different story. They said I'm not ready at all. I stood frozen in that hallway long after they'd gone. My wrist still tingling where Logan's fingers had been. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. People didn't confess their love right before their weddings. They didn't look at their assistants like they were drowning and ask them to be their lifeline. They didn't blow up their entire lives on what should be the most important day of their existence. Except Logan just had. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Probably the wedding planner needing confirmation on something. But I couldn't make myself move. My mind kept replaying his words on an endless loop. I'm in love with you. Run away with me. How long had I wanted to hear those words? How many nights had I fallen asleep, imagining a world where Logan saw me as more than just the person who managed his schedule and brought him lunch when he forgot to eat. But not like this. Never like this. Eli? Eli, there you are. The wedding planner, Vanessa, appeared at the end of the hallway. Her headset slightly askew and her expression frazzled. The florist is having a crisis about the centerpieces on table 7, and someone needs to tell the string quartet they're playing the wrong version of the processional. Where have you been? Sorry. I pushed off the wall, forcing my brain back into assistant mode. This was what I was good at, solving problems. Managing chaos. Keeping everything running smoothly even when my world was falling apart. I'll handle it. What else? The photographer wants to know if we're doing the first look or if Logan's going straight to the altar. I couldn't find him to ask. Straight to the altar, I said automatically, even though the words felt like glass in my throat. No first look. Let's stick to the original timeline. Vanessa nodded and rushed off, already talking into her headset about boutonniere pins and champagne flutes. I followed at a slower pace, my clipboard back in my hands, my professional mask firmly in place. Just get through the ceremony. I told myself, just make sure everything goes perfectly, and then you can go home and fall apart in private. The garden had filled up while I'd been having my world shattered in a hallway. Guests were seated and chatting, programs fluttering in the gentle breeze. The string quartet played something soft and romantic. Sunlight filtered through the trees, casting everything in a golden glow that would photograph beautifully. It was perfect. Absolutely perfect. And I wanted to burn it all down. Instead, I checked in with the caterers, confirmed the timing with the DJ, and made sure the flower girl knew which basket was hers. I smiled and nodded and acted like this was just another event, just another day at work. No one could tell that my hands were shaking or that my heart felt like it was cracking down the middle. No one except maybe Logan. I found a seat in the very back row, partially hidden behind a tall arrangement of white roses. From here I could see everything but remain invisible. Exactly where I'd always been in Logan's life. The musicians shifted their music, signaling the ceremony was about to start. The guests quieted, turning their attention toward the arch. Then Logan appeared. He walked to the altar alone. No groomsman, no father at his side for this part. Just him in that perfect tuxedo, his posture straight and his expression carefully neutral. But I'd spent 4 years studying every micro-expression, I saw the tension in his jaw, the way his hands flexed at his sides like he was resisting the urge to make fists, the almost imperceptible way his eyes scanned the crowd, looking for me. When his gaze found mine in the back row, everything else disappeared. It was just him and me and the weight of what he'd said in the hallway. His expression shifted, something desperate and pleading flashing across his features before he locked it down again. I couldn't breathe. The music changed. The wedding march began. Everyone stood and turned toward the aisle where Claire appeared on her father's arm. She was radiant in her dress, all lace and silk and pearls, her smile bright and excited. She looked like a bride should look. Happy, confident, ready to start her new life. She had no idea the man waiting for her at the altar had just told someone else he was in love with them. I sat back down before anyone noticed I hadn't stood in the first place. My legs wouldn't have held me anyway. I watched Claire glide down the aisle, watched her father hand her off to Logan, watched them turn to face the officiant. Claire was beaming. Logan looked like he was attending a funeral. The officiant began speaking, something about love and commitment and the journey they were about to embark on. The words washed over me without meaning. All I could focus on was Logan's rigid stance, the way his hand trembled slightly when he took Claire's, the way he still hadn't looked at her directly. Marriage is not just a union of two people, the officiant continued, but a promise to build a life together through joy and hardship, through triumph and struggle. It requires honesty, trust, and the courage to be vulnerable with another person. Honesty. The word echoed in my head. What would honesty look like right now? Logan standing up and admitting he didn't love his bride? Claire finding out on what should be the happiest day of her life that she was a business arrangement? Me confessing that I'd been in love with him since the day he'd stayed late to help me fix a mistake I'd made, that I'd memorized the way he took his coffee and the sound of his laugh and the exact shade of gray his eyes turned when he was thinking hard about something. No. Honesty would destroy everyone. Silence was kinder. If anyone here knows of any reason why this couple should not be married, the officiant said, and my whole body tensed. Speak now or forever hold your peace. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear my own heartbeat, could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on my chest. Part of me, the reckless, hopeful part I usually kept locked away, wanted to stand up, wanted to say something, anything to stop this train wreck before it happened. But I didn't move, because I was Eli Carter, the assistant, the background character in Logan's story, not the leading man. The officiant smiled, satisfied with the silence. Then by the power vested in me by the state of New York, wait. The single word cut through the air like a gunshot. Everyone froze. Claire's smile faltered. The officiant stopped mid-sentence, confusion flickering across his face, and Logan turned away from his bride to look directly at me. I can't do this, he said, his voice carrying across the stunned, silent garden. He wasn't speaking to the officiant or to Claire or to anyone else. He was speaking to me. I'm sorry, but I can't. Then he stepped down from the altar and started walking toward me. The garden erupted into chaos. Gasps and whispers and someone's sharp, "What the hell?" But Logan didn't stop. He moved through the rows of chairs like a man possessed, his eyes never leaving mine. When he reached my row, he held out his hand. "Come with me," he said simply. "Please, and God help me." But I took his hand and let him pull me to my feet. The world became a blur of shocked faces and rising voices as Logan's hand closed around mine. "Logan, what are you doing?" Claire's voice rang out, high-pitched and desperate. I could hear her heels clicking on the stone pathway as she hurried down from the altar, her dress rustling. Logan. But he didn't turn around. He kept moving, pulling me through the rows of chairs, past the guests who were standing now, their phones already out, recording what would probably be the scandal of the year. The Hawthorne heir abandoning his wedding to run off with his male assistant. The headlines would be brutal. I should let go of his hand. I should stop this before it got any worse. But my fingers were locked around his like they'd forgotten how to release. Like 4 years of wanting him had finally taken control and my brain was just along for the ride. Logan Hawthorne, you stop right now. His father's voice boomed across the garden. Authoritative and furious. Think about what you're doing. Think about the company. Logan's grip on my hand tightened, but he kept walking. We were almost to the garden's exit when someone stepped into our path. Claire's father, his face red with rage. You're going to embarrass my daughter like this, he snarled. After everything our families agreed to? You're finished, boy. Finished. Move, Logan said quietly, but there was steel in his voice I'd never heard before. Please move. For a moment I thought Mr. Monroe might actually try to physically stop us. But something in Logan's expression must have changed his mind, because he stepped aside, still sputtering threats about lawyers and destroyed reputations. Then we were through the exit, past the garden, into the parking area where Logan's sleek black Audi sat gleaming in the sunlight. He fumbled with his keys, his hands shaking now that the adrenaline was catching up with him. Logan. I finally found my voice, though it came out raspy and uncertain. Logan. Wait, we need to think about this. No more thinking. He unlocked the car and opened the passenger door, looking at me with those desperate gray eyes. I've been thinking for 2 years, Eli. Overthinking. Convincing myself I could go through with it, that duty and responsibility mattered more than being happy. But I was wrong. Your father will disown me. I know. He laughed, but it was edged with something brittle. He'll probably cut me out of the company too. Remove me from the will. I'll lose everything I've spent my life building. Then why are you doing this? The question burst out of me, raw and confused. Why now? Why me? Logan's expression softened. He reached up and touched my face, just his fingertips against my cheek. Feather-light and reverent. Because nothing I've built means anything if I can't be myself. And I've never felt more like myself than when I'm with you. Behind us, people were spilling out of the garden. I could hear Claire crying. Could hear Logan's father shouting orders at someone. Probably security or maybe his lawyer. We had maybe seconds before they reached us. Get in the car, Logan said. Please. You can change your mind later. You can leave whenever you want. But right now, please just get in the car. I looked at him, really looked at him. At the man I'd loved silently for 4 years, the one I'd convinced myself was completely out of my reach. He was offering me everything I'd ever wanted and everything I'd never dared to ask for. He was also offering me chaos, scandal, and the destruction of the life I'd carefully built. I got in the car. Logan's relief was visible as he closed my door and rushed to the driver's side. He started the engine just as his father reached us, slamming his hand against the window. Logan, don't you dare drive away. We can fix this. We can. Logan shifted into drive and we left them all behind. The wedding, the guests, the life he'd been groomed for since birth. The venue disappeared in the rearview mirror and neither of us said anything in a long time. We just drove, leaving the city behind, heading toward the highway that led out of state. My mind was racing, jumping between panic and disbelief and a dangerous spark of hope. I was afraid to acknowledge. What had we just done? What had I just done? I'd helped Logan Hawthorne blow up his wedding, abandon his fiancée at the altar, and probably destroy his relationship with his family. I'd crossed every professional boundary, shattered every rule about appropriate workplace behavior, and somehow I didn't regret it. Say something, Logan finally said, his voice tight. Tell me I'm insane. Tell me I've ruined everything. Just say something. Where are we going? I asked instead. He glanced at me, surprised by the question. I don't know. Anywhere. Nowhere. Does it matter? It might. I was gripping the door handle so hard my knuckles were white. Your father's probably already calling his lawyers. Claire's family is going to want revenge. This is going to be a nightmare, Logan. For both of us. I know. He merged onto the highway, his jaw set. I know what I've done. What I've cost you too. Your job is probably gone. Your reputation. I've dragged you into a mess without asking if you even want. I love you. The words fell out of me before I could stop them, raw and unfiltered. Logan's head whipped toward me so fast I thought he might drive off the road. What? I love you, I repeated, and saying it again felt like breaking open a dam. I have for years, since the night you stayed late to help me fix the Henderson presentation after I'd completely bought it. Since you brought me soup when I had the flu and sat in my apartment reading contract proposals out loud because you knew I was stressed about falling behind. Since every tiny moment when you made me feel like I mattered, like I was more than just an assistant. Logan's hands were trembling on the steering wheel. Eli. So yes, this is insane. I continued, my voice stronger now. Yes, we've probably destroyed both our lives. Yes, I'm terrified of what happens next. But if I have to choose between safety and you, I turned to look at him fully. I choose you. I'll always choose you. He pulled over so abruptly the tires squealed. We were on the shoulder of the highway, cars rushing past us, and Logan was staring at me like I'd just handed him the world. You mean that, he said. And it wasn't a question. Every word. Then he was kissing me, desperate and grateful and real. His hands cupped my face, his lips warm against mine. And it was nothing like I'd imagined during all those lonely nights. It was better. It was terrifying and perfect and completely insane. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, Logan pressed his forehead against mine. We're going to figure this out, he whispered. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together. I nodded, unable to speak past the emotion clogging my throat. Together, I finally managed. And as we pulled back onto the highway, driving toward an uncertain future, I realized something. For the first time in 4 years, I wasn't just Logan's assistant anymore. I was his. The highway stretched endlessly before us, a ribbon of asphalt leading nowhere and everywhere at once. We'd been driving for over an hour in heavy silence. The kind that wasn't comfortable but wasn't quite hostile either. It was the silence of two people who just jumped off a cliff together and were still falling, waiting to see if there was water below or just rocks. Logan's knuckles were bone white against the steering wheel, his jaw clenched so tight I worried he might crack a tooth. I kept my gaze fixed on the passing landscape, rolling hills giving way to dense forest, small towns with their church steeples and gas stations blurring past. Anything to avoid looking at him at the reality of what we'd done. My phone had been buzzing non-stop in my pocket for the first 30 minutes. I'd finally turned it off, unable to face whatever messages were flooding in. Angry texts from Logan's father probably. Hurt, confused ones from Claire maybe. Or worse, sympathetic ones from coworkers who'd seen the footage that was undoubtedly already viral. Assistant and boss in wedding day scandal. Hawthorne heir abandons bride at altar. Same-sex affair rocks elite wedding. The headlines wrote themselves. We need gas, Logan said suddenly, his voice rough from disuse. It was the first thing either of us had said since getting on the highway. I glanced at the dashboard. The fuel gauge was hovering just above empty. There's a station at the next exit. He nodded and took the turn, pulling into a weathered gas station that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 90s. The pumps were old, the paint was peeling, and a flickering neon sign advertised lottery tickets and fountain drinks. It was so far removed from Logan's world of marble lobbies and valet parking that it felt almost surreal. Logan got out without a word and started pumping gas. I watched him through the window, this man in a designer tuxedo, slightly rumpled now, standing at a rundown gas station in the middle nowhere. He looked lost. Or maybe found. I couldn't tell anymore. I got out too, needing to stretch my legs and escape the confined space where my thoughts were too loud. The air was cooler here, away from the city, and it smelled like pine and gasoline. I walked toward the small convenience store, its fluorescent lights harsh against the approaching dusk. Inside, a bored teenager behind the counter looked up from his phone, gave me a once-over in my suit, and went back to scrolling. I grabbed 2 bottles of water and some chips. Neither of us had eaten since this morning, and my stomach was starting to remind me of that fact. When I came back out, Logan had finished pumping and was leaning against the car, staring at his phone with an expression I couldn't read. 53 missed calls, he said without looking up. 37 text messages. My father's lawyer has already sent a cease and desist about something I didn't read past the subject line. I handed him a water bottle. Are you going to respond? Not yet. He pocketed the phone and took the water, our fingers brushing in the exchange. Even that small touch sent electricity through me. I don't know what to say to them. The truth might be a good start. He laughed, but it was bitter. The truth. That I've been lying to everyone for 2 years? That I agreed to marry a woman I didn't love because it was good for business and made my father happy? That I'm in love with my male assistant and finally cracked under the pressure. He took a long drink of water. Yeah, I'm sure that'll go over well. You don't owe them a performance, Logan. I kept my voice gentle but firm. You spent your whole life being who they wanted you to be. Maybe it's time to just be yourself. And who is that exactly? He turned to face me fully and I could see the vulnerability in his eyes. The fear and confusion of someone who'd just burned down their entire identity. The dutiful son, the corporate heir, the closeted gay man who was too much of a coward to come out until he literally ran away from his own wedding. You're not a coward. The words came out harder than I intended. A coward would have gone through with it, would have married her and lived a lie for the rest of his life. What you did today took more courage than anything else. Did it, or was I just selfish? He pushed off the car, running his hands through his hair in frustration. Claire didn't deserve that, Eli. She didn't deserve to be humiliated in front of everyone she knows. Her family's probably ready to sue us into oblivion. And honestly, I wouldn't blame them. So what are you saying? My chest tightened. That you regret it? That you wish you'd just married her? No. The answer came immediately, almost desperately. God, no. He broke off, struggling to find the words. I don't regret choosing you. I regret that choosing you meant hurting her. Both things can be true. I understood that. The guilt was eating at me too, a constant gnawing in my gut, but underneath the guilt was something else. Something that felt dangerously like happiness. Like freedom. We can't change what happened, I said quietly. We can only decide what we do next. Logan looked at me for a long moment, his gray eyes searching mine like he was looking for answers. I wasn't sure I had. Then he closed the distance between us, his hand coming up to cup my cheek. What do you want to do next? He asked, his thumb tracing my cheekbone. My heart was hammering so hard I was sure he could feel it. I want to stop running and figure out where we're actually going. I want to find some place we can breathe and think clearly. I stopped myself, suddenly embarrassed by how much I was revealing. What? Logan prompted gently. What else do you want? I want to know this is real. I admitted. That in a week or a month, you won't wake up and realize you made a mistake. That I'm not just a rebellion, an escape route from a life you didn't want. Something shifted in Logan's expression, hurt flashing across his features before being replaced by determination. He took my face in both hands, forcing me to meet his eyes. Eli Carter, listen to me very carefully. His voice was steady, certain in a way I hadn't heard all day. I have been in love with you for 2 years. 2 years of sitting across from you in meetings and wanting to reach for your hand. 2 years of staying late at the office just to have an excuse to be near you. 2 years of lying awake at night wishing things could be different. My breath caught. You are not a rebellion, he continued. You are not an escape route. You are the only real thing in my life, and I am done pretending otherwise. So yes, this is real. More real than anything I've ever felt. Then he kissed me. Right there in the parking lot of that rundown gas station, with the neon lights flickering overhead and the smell of gasoline in the air. And despite everything, the chaos, the guilt, the uncertainty, it felt like coming home. When we broke apart, I was smiling. Actually smiling. Okay, I said softly. Let's find somewhere to stay. Logan nodded, relief evident in his expression. Somewhere quiet. Where we can just be. We got back in the car, and as Logan pulled back onto the highway, I realized something had shifted. We weren't running anymore. We were choosing. The motel we found was the definition of unremarkable. A squat single-story building off a rural highway, with a flickering vacancy sign and paint that might have been yellow once but had faded to something closer to gray. The parking lot held exactly 3 other cars, all of them at least a decade old and covered in road dust. It was perfect. Logan pulled into a spot near the office, and we both sat there for a moment staring at the building like it might bite us. In his world, accommodations meant 5-star hotels with marble bathrooms and rooms. This place probably had cigarette burns in the carpet and a vending machine that only worked half the time. Last chance to change your mind, I said, trying to keep my tone light even though my stomach was in knots. I'm sure there's a Hilton somewhere within 100 miles. Logan turned to look at me, one eyebrow raised. Are you having second thoughts? No, I answered honestly. But I thought maybe you were. This is probably the furthest thing from what you're used to. Good, he said simply and got out of the car. The office was small and smelled like stale coffee and pine air freshener. An older woman sat behind the counter, her reading glasses perched on her nose as she worked on a crossword puzzle. She looked up when we entered, her gaze taking in our wrinkled suits with mild interest but no judgment. Help you boys? She asked in a raspy voice that suggested decades of cigarette smoking. We need a room, Logan said. Just for tonight. One bed or two. The question hung in the air between us. This was it, the moment where we had to acknowledge what we were doing, what this meant. One, I said before Logan could answer, my voice steadier than I felt. The woman nodded like she'd been asked about the weather and pushed a registration form across the counter. $55. Cash or card? Logan pulled out his wallet and handed over his credit card. As she processed it, I saw her glance at the name on the card, Logan Hawthorne. If she recognized it, she didn't show it. Small mercies. She handed us a physical key attached to a green plastic tag with the number 7 on it. Down the way, last door on the left. Checkout's at 11. Continental breakfast starts at 6. But don't get your hopes up, it's just coffee and muffins. Thank you, Logan said, and we left before she could see his hands shaking. Room 7 was exactly what I'd expected. Small, dated, with a queen-sized bed covered in a faded floral comforter, a TV that probably still had a VCR hookup, and a bathroom with tile that had seen better days. But it was clean enough, and more importantly, it was private. Logan locked the door behind us and immediately went to close the curtains, blocking out the parking lot and the highway beyond. Then he just stood there, his back to me, his shoulders tight with tension. Logan, I'm terrified, he said quietly, still not turning around. I'm standing here in this motel room, and all I can think is what now? I don't have a plan, Eli. I don't have a backup strategy or a contingency. I just have the... I crossed the room and placed my hand on his shoulder, feeling the tremor running through him. Then we figure it out together. We don't have to have all the answers right now. My father is going to destroy me. He turned to face me and I was shocked to see tears threatening to spill from his eyes. Logan never cried. Not when his mother died. Not when his first business venture failed. Not even when the pressure of the company seemed to be crushing him. But he was close to crying now. He's going to use every connection he has to make sure I never work in this industry again. The Monroe family will probably sue. Claire? God, Claire must hate me. Probably. I agreed gently. You hurt her badly. There's no getting around that. I know. He sank down onto the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. I keep seeing her face when I walked away from the altar. She looked so confused, so betrayed, and she had every right to be. I sat down next to him close enough that our shoulders touched. You made a choice, Logan. It was a hard one and it hurt people, but it was honest. That has to count for something, does it? He looked at me, his eyes red-rimmed. Or did I just blow up multiple lives because I couldn't handle the pressure anymore? You didn't blow anything up. I took his hand, threading our fingers together. You stopped living a lie. There's a difference. We sat in silence for a while. The only sound, the distant hum of traffic on the highway and the rattle of the air conditioning unit. Logan's thumb traced circles on the back of my hand, an unconscious gesture that sent warmth spreading through my chest. Tell me about when you first knew, he said eventually. When did you realize you had feelings for me? I smiled at the memory, bittersweet as it was. Remember about 3 years ago when I accidentally sent that confidential contract to the wrong client? The Morrison deal, Logan said immediately. You were convinced you were going to get fired. I was convinced I should get fired. I just compromised a multi-million-dollar acquisition. I shook my head at my younger, more foolish self. But you stayed late with me, helped me draft the apology emails and damage control strategy. We ordered terrible Chinese food and ate it straight from the containers while going over every possible scenario. I remember, you got sauce on your tie and tried to hide it. You noticed that? I noticed everything about you. His voice was soft. I always did. My heart clenched. Around 2 in the morning, you looked at me and said, "Mistakes happen, Eli. What matters is how we fix them." And I realized, this man could have thrown me under the bus to protect himself. But instead he was sitting here eating cold lo mein and treating me like an equal. That's when I fell. Logan's grip on my hand tightened. I wish I'd known. Would it have changed anything? Maybe. Probably. I don't know. He leaned his head against my shoulder, and I felt the last of his tension slowly draining away. I spent so long trying to be what everyone expected that I forgot how to want things for myself. But I always wanted you, even when I was telling myself I couldn't have you. You have me now, I whispered. He lifted his head to look at me, his eyes searching mine. Do I? Really? Even after everything that happened today, all the chaos I've dragged you into, you still want this? Instead of answering with words, I kissed him. It was softer than the kiss at the gas station, less desperate but somehow more intense. It was a promise, a choice, a yes to every question he was asking. When we pulled apart, Logan was smiling. Really smiling. Not the practiced corporate smile he wore like armor, but something genuine and a little amazed. We should probably eat something, he said, though he made no move to let me go. I think there was a diner a few miles back. Or, I suggested, we could order pizza and just stay here. Hide from the world for a little while longer. Logan's smile widened. I like that plan better. So that's what we did. Morning came too quickly and not quickly enough. I woke up tangled in unfamiliar sheets. Logan's arm draped across my waist, his breath warm against the back of my neck. For a moment, one beautiful disorienting moment, I forgot where we were and why. I just felt safe, content, like I'd finally found something I'd been searching for without knowing I was looking. Then reality crashed back in. We'd run away from Logan's wedding. His phone was probably exploding with messages. The news had definitely spread by now. Our faces were likely plastered across social media, dissected by strangers who knew nothing about us but felt entitled to judge everything. Logan stirred behind me, his arm tightening briefly before he woke up fully. I felt him tense as the same realization hit him last night was real. And now we had to face the consequences. Morning, he murmured, his voice rough with sleep. Morning. Neither of us moved for a long moment, both reluctant to leave this small bubble of peace we'd created. But the world was waiting, ready or not. Logan's phone buzzed on the nightstand, probably the 100th time since last night. He'd turned it back on around midnight, just long enough to send a single text to his assistant. His actual assistant, not me. Patricia, who'd been with the company for 15 years and would probably have a heart attack when she came into work Monday morning. The text had been simple. I'm safe. Taking some time. We'll explain later. Now he reached for the phone, scrolling through the notifications with an expression that grew progressively more grim. Well, he said after a moment, my father has officially disowned me. He released a statement saying I'm no longer affiliated with Hawthorne Industries, and that my actions don't reflect the company's values. He kept scrolling. Claire's family is threatening legal action for emotional distress and breach of contract. Apparently there was a prenup that included clauses about the wedding itself. And the media. He trailed off, turning the phone so I could see. The headline made my stomach drop. Scandalous affair. Hawthorne heirs secret romance with male assistant exposed. Below it was a photo, grainy but unmistakable, of Logan and me in the gas station parking lot, kissing. Someone must have recognized us and taken it on their phone. The article was everything you'd expect: salacious speculation, quotes from anonymous sources close to the family, and a breakdown of Logan's net worth and social standing, or former standing as the case may be. They're calling you a homewrecker, Logan said, his jaw tight, saying you seduced me, manipulated me, that I was under your influence. Anger flared hot in my chest. Of course they are. Can't have the golden boy taking responsibility for his own choices. I'm going to fix this. Logan was already typing something on his phone. I'm going to release my own statement. Make it clear that this was entirely my decision, that you had nothing to do with. I took the phone from his hands and set it aside. Logan, stop. You can't control the narrative anymore. People are going to think what they want to think. But they're blaming you for something that's my fault. It's not about fault. I sat up, pulling the sheet around my waist. It's about two people who fell in love in a complicated situation. You made choices, I made choices. We're both adults. Let them say whatever they want, we know the truth. Logan looked at me like I'd just spoken a foreign language. How are you so calm about this? I'm not. I laughed, but it was shaky. I'm terrified. I'll probably lose my job if I haven't already. My reputation is definitely destroyed. My family, I paused, my chest tightening at the thought. My family is going to see this and have a lot of questions I'm not ready to answer. I hadn't come out to my parents, hadn't really come out to anyone except a few close friends. I'd been planning to do it eventually on my own terms when the time was right. Now the entire world knew before my own mother did. I'm sorry, Logan said quietly. This is exactly what I was afraid of. That being with me would ruin your life. You haven't ruined anything. I took his face in my hands, forcing him to look at me. You gave me something I've wanted for 4 years, but never thought I could have. Yes, it's messy. Yes, there are going to be consequences, but I don't regret it. Logan. Not for a second. His eyes searched mine, looking for doubt or resentment or anger. Finding none, he kissed me, soft and grateful, and a little desperate. When we broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine. What do we do now? It was the question of the hour, the day, possibly the rest of our lives. What did we do when we'd burned down everything we'd built and were left standing in the ashes? We start over, I said, surprised by the certainty in my voice. We find a place to live somewhere far away from the city and the media circus. You figure out what you want to now that you're not tied to your father's company. I figure out what career looks like when I'm not your assistant. We build something new. You make it sound so simple. It's not simple, I acknowledged. It's probably going to be the hardest thing either of us has ever done. But we'll do it together. That's the difference. Logan pulled back to look at me. Really look at me, and something in his expression shifted. The fear and uncertainty were still there, but underneath was something else. Hope maybe, or determination. Or just this quiet realization that sometimes the hardest path is also the right one. Okay, he said. Together, we spent the rest of the morning making plans. Logan would hire a lawyer to deal with the legal fallout and handle communication with his family. I would call my parents before they saw it on the news. We'd find a short-term rental somewhere quiet, maybe upstate or out west, somewhere the vultures couldn't find us easily. We'd take time to breathe and figure out who we were outside of our old roles. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was a start. By noon, we'd checked out of the motel and were back on the highway, heading toward an uncertain future. But this time, the silence in the car wasn't heavy with unspoken words. It was comfortable, companionable. I glanced over at Logan as he drove, his profile sharp against the window, his hand resting on the center console where I could reach for it if I wanted to. He caught me looking and smiled, that real smile I'd seen so rarely before yesterday, the one that made him look younger and lighter and like himself. What are you thinking about? He asked. That I could get used to this. What, terrible motels and gas station coffee? No. I laced my fingers through his. This. Us. Just being normal people instead of boss and assistants. Logan's smile widened. We were never very good at normal anyway. No. I agreed, laughing. I guess we weren't. The road stretched out before us, full of possibilities and second chances. And for the first time in 4 years, I felt free.